Right, Helen, over to you, Mark.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm really pleased to come and talk to, well, not come, but virtually come and talk to you about the Yorkshire Air Ambulance. I'm one of the volunteers in West Yorkshire. So I do a lot of these talks and used to do them face to face, and I'm now getting used to doing them on Zoom. So I hope it'll all work smoothly this evening, but we'll see. I've got a PowerPoint presentation to share with you, which includes a small film clip just giving you a bit of information about the air ambulance. So I'll run through that, and then we'll take some time for questions at the end, if that's okay. Yep, so I'll just share my screen. Hopefully it will update you on things that have changed in the last few years.
Used to it. And you come here and at first it's a steep learning curve, but then you get used to everything. But the time you do notice it is when the second aircraft comes to back you up on a job, and the noise and the downdraft and the whole wowzers of the aircraft, it sort of reminds you how lucky you are to be doing this job. So my name's Lisa Dempster and I'm one of the aircrew paramedics with Yorkshire Air Ambulance.
My name's James Stubley. I'm a HEMS clinical supervisor, so I work as a paramedic here.
My name's Pete Balance. I'm aircrew paramedic at Yorkshire Air Ambulance.
My name's Becky. I'm one of the doctors that works here on the Air Ambulance.
So my name's James Allen. I'm a HEMS paramedic and I work at Yorkshire Air Ambulance.
So my name's Captain Lee Holmes. I'm a pilot with the Yorkshire Air Ambulance. Captain's an interesting one, isn't it? When I say captain, I think it's more a reminder for me of what my roles and responsibilities are, rather than clear the way I'm a captain, don't you know. Where I am in charge is in the aircraft. Once we get to the scene, my role is very much a bag carrier.
Lee jokes with us that he sort of is turned into a bag carrier, but it really is helpful for us because we carry a lot of equipment, and then obviously when we get down to the patient, if it's a case of extricating them, sometimes just having that extra pair of hands while you're walking over uneven terrain to get them back to the aircraft is invaluable, really.
It's very much a team effort.
Us getting to scene quickly is the big thing. The team here and what they can deliver is what will save people's lives.
We do work as quite a close-knit team. There's 17 of us, primarily paramedics, and I think 8 or 9 pilots.
Yeah, I've been working for Yorkshire Air Ambulance for 2 years. Before that I was a police pilot, and before that I flew for the military. And I've enjoyed every minute of it.
This is my second 2-year secondment I'm into now. But we only employ consultants, so you have to be a consultant before you can apply.
So I've been working for Yorkshire Air Ambulance for 5 years now. I've worked for the ambulance service for 17 years. As a paramedic, you strive to be at the top of your game. You want to deliver the clinical excellence. You want to deliver to every patient the very best that you can.
The work's very interesting and varied, and it's challenging. I've probably seen more in a year here than I would probably have seen in 20 years if I was working on a normal ambulance. I have a 3-year secondment, and then depending on what happens, there may be a job here or there may not be. So yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'd be gutted if I couldn't come back.
It sort of finds a place within your heart. Yeah, I'd be gutted if for whatever reason I had to give it up.
I'd really miss it. I'd miss the team, I'd miss the clinical work. It's really nice to know people appreciate what we do.
I've had 16 years working here, and that's a massive part of my working life. The way...
Oops. Oh, sorry about that. I don't know what's happened there. I'll just try again. Repeat that. So this is just a little bit of information about the Air Ambulance. We are an independent charity, and we provide our life-saving rapid response service to the 5 million people that live across the whole of Yorkshire. And we are operational 365 days a year. So we're always available, even on Christmas Day we're there. But it costs us £12,000 every day to keep the helicopters flying. So sometimes people are surprised to hear that we are a charity and that we aren't funded in the same way as the land ambulances or the fire brigade or the police services. But we are supported by the NHS through secondment of paramedics and doctors, but the pilots and the helicopters and all the operations we have to fundraise for. And as I say, it's £12,000 every day for us to do that. And our operations now, we've recently bought 2 new helicopters. We bought them in 2016 because the old ones were starting to be quite expensive for maintenance. They were costing us £1 million a year just to maintain. So we'd been saving up and raising money, and we were able to purchase 2 state-of-the-art Airbus H145 helicopters. And they are the ones that most air ambulances use at the moment, as do the police. And these were much more spacious. So we had a much bigger cabin, which meant it was easier for the paramedics to help somebody in flight. And also the access at the back is easier. The old helicopters had side entrances, and that made it quite tricky getting stretchers in. But the double door access at the back is much easier. And of course, we fundraised to get the big medical fit out for the new helicopters. So they're a real high spec. We've a new patient stretcher system so that people can have a nice comfortable ride, and we carry blood on board. So they're advances that we couldn't do with the old helicopters. And of course, because they're new, we don't need to service them so often. They don't need to be out of action so regularly. Obviously, the maintenance costs are lower because they're brand new. And they are fully night capable. The old helicopters meant we had to land as it was getting dusk, but these helicopters have got lights on and can fly in the dark, which has really helped us to expand our service. So on board the helicopters, we've got a mixture of very skilled staff. We've got pilots. As you heard from the film, a lot of the pilots have had to have been in command for 2,000 hours of flying time, so they're ex-military. We've got paramedics and doctors, and they make up the critical care team. And really, they are flying out a lot of skills from the A&E departments out to where the scene of the accident or incident might be taken. And they've all worked in land ambulances, in hospitals, and in other flying roles previously. So the critical care team really can perform some quite complex procedures at the road. So it's not really any longer arriving, scooping people up and getting them back to the hospital as quickly as possible. Actually, they spend quite a lot of time at scene now doing procedures, so they can take over somebody's breathing, they can do blood transfusions, they can do C-sections. Not very long ago, they delivered twins on the side of the A1. So, you know, they can do quite a lot of things at the road, in the field, that they might have not been able to do in the past. As I say, our pilots are all very experienced. You've got to have been a pilot in command. 2,000 hours of flying time in that position is quite a lot, so most people have got a military background. We've got male and female pilots that work on a rota basis. And we carry specialist equipment, so we're able to refill the cylinders, the oxygen cylinders, and that means it's really useful to be able to treat 2 or 3 people if necessary at an incident, or if they've become sick. The picture shows our paediatric trainers, so we can train staff how to use the equipment on a small child, an infant, because we do pick up children and babies as well. The only age limit is if it's a baby that needs a small incubator or something, we can't take them, but if they are big enough to be able to transport in the helicopter, then we will take them. And we've got these special casualty bags that make it possible to keep somebody nice and warm when they're being lifted on a stretcher. And these are some things that we've got recently. You showed there was a little bit in the film clip of the staff training. So when they're not on a call out, they spend a lot of time training to keep their skills up to speed. And these mannequins are actually really lifelike. You can set the heart rate, you can set blood pressure, they feel realistic, the skin's real. You can give them different injuries and they're really very lifelike, so they can practice a lot of procedures on these sim bodies. And we've got male, female, and young, old, and we've got children. And the picture on the right here shows them using those sim bodies in the training suite in the airbase. And you can see in the background, projected on the screen, is a football pitch scene. So they can practice, they can put the noises, they can put the images, because obviously the paramedics and the doctors are not working in a hospital setting, in an operating theatre. They have to be used to being out and about. And all of this sound makes it much more realistic for them training, so it can feel like they're on a pitch if somebody's had an accident while they've been playing rugby or football. And having blood on board can make a big difference to people. If somebody's losing a lot of blood when they arrive, they're able to now do a blood transfusion on scene. So they take with them 2 units of O negative every day, and that means that anybody can have O negative. So they can provide a blood transfusion if necessary, and that definitely saves lives, getting blood to people very quickly. So as I say, in the past, our job really was to get people to the hospital as quickly as possible, but now we're kind of taking the hospital to them. So our critical care team takes a lot of the skills and the equipment that you might have previously had to wait to get to hospital to make use of. Now you can have that there and then at the side of the road. So really it means that people are often stabilised at the roadside, and not necessarily flown back to a hospital, because the crew can sometimes stabilise them sufficiently that they can go in a land ambulance, or they can be accompanied by our crew in a land ambulance where there's more space. And sometimes if somebody's suffered a traumatic head injury, they can be quite distressed, they might be quite aggressive. And so having a bit more space is a bit safer for everybody in a land ambulance. So quite often, a lot of the skills of our paramedics enable somebody to go safely in a land ambulance. So as I say, these new helicopters are night capable, which means we've actually been able to fly for 20% more flying hours than previously. We used to stop at dusk, which in the winter at this time of year would be tea time. And now we can go right through till midnight. So we fly from 6 in the morning till midnight across the 2 air bases. But we also had to raise money and then train the crew to use these night vision goggles, which you can see on the paramedic in the right hand picture there. Those goggles enable them to see, because although the helipads that they're landing on and the air bases are all lit, obviously when they're out flying in the dark and when they're trying to land in a field somewhere, they need to be able to see. So these night vision goggles help them to see more effectively. And the green picture below is actually what it looks like through the goggles. It doesn't look very easy to see, but they assure me that that makes it a lot easier to see when they're out and about flying. So in the year 19 to 20, we were able to go on 198 extra missions at night that we wouldn't have done without being able to use this night vision stuff. So it has made a big difference to the number of people that we can help. Of course, with COVID-19, we've had to make a lot of changes. Initially, all of our helicopters, all of our crew, the paramedics and the doctors were all called back to the hospitals to help with the COVID wards. And our pilots became helping to transport equipment. So they were transporting PPE. They were doing lots of things to help and assist by flying, not people, but things around. They're now back flying and they are now back with our crew. But they've had to change a lot of what they do. You can see on the picture there, there's a plastic screen being fitted between the cabin and the pilot. And all of the crew have had to train how to use the PPE. You can see them training with a sim body there with the full kit on. They've had to work very carefully to make sure that both they and the passengers are safe. And so it's changed a lot of the way that they work and how they use their equipment and how it's all cleaned and so on. So, but they are now back and are flying and back providing the cover that we were. So we've got 2 helicopters. One's based at Topcliffe up near Thirsk, and one's based at Nostell Priory near Wakefield. So they're indicated on this little map on the right with a yellow and a red marker. And the 2 circles around the markers indicate 20 minutes flying time. So we think we've got them quite well positioned across the county, so that 90% of the population of Yorkshire live within one or other of those 2 circles. So we can get to people more or less anywhere in the county within 20 minutes. And of course, we go to lots of different places, towns, cities, built up areas, rural, isolated locations, particularly up in North Yorkshire. And roads and motorways. We've got more motorway miles than any other county crisscrossing across Yorkshire. So we used to have the helicopters based in at Yeadon, at Leeds Bradford Airport, and in Sheffield, but that was a bit too south in the county. So the one from Sheffield moved up to Topcliffe, and the one from Yeadon moved to Wakefield. And now we think that's a much better coverage of the county. So we're not far away. We're 20 minutes away at most from most of the people who live in the county. So when we do pick people up, we fly them to the nearest major trauma centre. So if you're in your neck of the woods in the south of Yorkshire, then it's likely to be the Sheffield Northern General. In the east, it would be the Hull Royal Infirmary. Up in the north, the James Cook at Middlesbrough, and then in the West Yorkshire, it's Leeds General Infirmary. And all of those hospitals have got lit helipads so that we can land at night if necessary. And the reason that we go to the major trauma centres rather than to the nearest hospital is that the major trauma centres have generally got all of the equipment, all of the staff, they've got the operating theatres, all of the things that people might need who suffered a serious accident or trauma. Previously, we might have, say, flown somebody to a more local hospital. As an example, if we might have flown somebody, say, to Harrogate District Hospital, they'd been stabilised, and then later that day they were often then transported by land ambulance to the LGI because they needed a particular scan or particular procedure. In the air, the difference between, say, Harrogate and Leeds is only a few minutes. So we made the decision that it was worth that extra few minutes to get people to the place that they needed to be. So 90% of patients are flown to these 4 major trauma centres. Just occasionally, we might fly, say somebody was a burns victim, we might fly them to, say, Pinderfield that specialises in that treatment. But generally, it's one of these 4 major trauma centres. So in the year 1920, we treated 1,149 patients across Yorkshire. But you'll see from that only 22% of those incidents resulted in us actually flying the patient to hospital. Because, as I've explained, that we are now treating people so much more at scene that they're able to go in the land ambulance. Road traffic collisions were the most attended type of incident. But 90% of those incidents that we went to, they were treated by the patients and by the paramedics. So they were receiving the care from the critical care team. And you can see this is geared around West Yorkshire because obviously I generally would do my talks in West Yorkshire, but I have got some information about South Yorkshire just to give you an idea of the sorts of incidents that have happened in your area since New Year. So I had a look back and there have been 17 incidents this year in South Yorkshire. 2 of them were horse related, 4 of them were road traffic collisions, 2 falls, 2 stabbings, 5 cardiac arrests, 1 shooting and 1 seizure. So that gives you a flavour of what's happened in South Yorkshire since New Year. So that's just to give you a flavour of that. So of those 17 incidents, 4 of them had our paramedics accompany them in a land ambulance to hospital. 7 of them were treated by our crew, but then went along with the land ambulance crew to hospital. One of them was actually flown by us. So that was a lady in one of the horse incidents was actually flown by us. And unfortunately, 5 of the people died. And when I looked at that, it was 5 cardiac arrests. And unfortunately, despite treatment, all 5 had died. So 4 of those were from Doncaster, 6 from Barnsley, 3 from Rotherham, 3 from Sheffield, and 1 from Mexborough. So that gives you a flavour. So we've been quite busy in the first few weeks of this year in South Yorkshire. 17 people that we've helped. So this is across the whole of Yorkshire. Just a few stats about the year 1920. So 198 night missions. Of the 1,149 patients that we treated at the scene, 117 of those were children. 26 people received blood, 335 people were airlifted to the major trauma centres, and 353 patients, we went with them in the land ambulance. And in the year, we responded to 1,523 emergency 999 calls. So you can see there's quite a range, and nearly sort of 50-50 split between airlifting and taking in the ambulance. And the age profile of people, the biggest group, the yellows, 37%, 40 to 65-year-olds, going down to 17 to 39-year-olds, and then over 65s is 19%, and then the rest are children and babies. So we had about 90% adults, 10% children in the year. And this map just gives you a flavour of where in Yorkshire the cases have been. So you can see that actually there's a pretty good spread across the whole of the county. Even a couple that have sneaked into Lancashire over there. We do work with the other air ambulances. If they need help, then we will go and help with all of the ones in the surrounding areas. But you can see, I don't know if you can see closely enough, but there were 70 incidents sort of hovering over Sheffield last year. So that gives you a flavour of really the spread across the county. So the costs, so as I say, it's £12,000 every day to raise to keep all that going. That amounts to £4.4 million every year, which somebody's worked out is £500 every hour. So if we manage to keep going for an hour, it'll be £500 we've had to raise. But there are 4.4 million adults in Yorkshire. So we reckon if every adult was able to donate £1 a year, then it wouldn't be too bad and it would keep us operational. And suddenly it doesn't seem so sort of difficult to achieve. But we get huge support from people across the county. And we get support in lots of different ways to help keep us going. We don't get any statutory funding from central government or local government. So to raise our £12,000 a day, we have to get a lot of support from a huge amount of people and companies across the county. But one of the things we do are very clear about is our fundraising. We are very careful about how we fundraise. So we just want to remind people that we don't ever do door knocking. We never come to anybody's door. We don't put envelopes or bags through people's door for recycling. We don't do cold calling, we don't exchange data, we don't pester people, and we don't do street funding, those people in town who stop you and ask you to sign up for a direct debit. And all of our volunteers have official branding, clothing, and our staff do. I've got my ID badge, everybody has an ID badge, and you can always check. Some people have thought they were supporting the Yorkshire Air Ambulance, and it turned out they were supporting other charities. There are a couple of others that may come round and do some of these things. One is called the County Air Ambulance that used to be fundraising to build helipads, and the other is the Children's Air Ambulance that provides a transport service by helicopter for poorly children from one hospital to the other. Both of them are fine. They're just not a HEMS service, which is a helicopter emergency medical service. So they They aren't providing the emergency service that we do. So it's just worth checking if anybody does approach you, and if you are wanting to support us, then we will be happy for you to check that. And these are the ways we get the funding. As you'd expect, most of the ways most charities do. People leave gifts in wills, in memory of people, in lieu of birthdays, weddings. We have a lottery, we have an online shop. Lots of people donate online, and we get massive support from different companies and lots of groups like yours and others across the county, and it makes all the difference, and it really does keep us going. And we try and provide support to help people who are fundraising. We have resources, we've got kits, and we can provide t-shirts and balloons, and we can even send one of these big Pollys like you can see in the picture there. That's Polly the paramedic, and we have Percy the pilot. So we have a lot of resources that we can support if people are fundraising for us. But Gifts in Wills is a massive contribution. It's a third of our life-saving missions funded through Gifts in Wills, and that is really makes a huge difference to us, keeps the service going. But one of the ways that we get a lot of support is through recycling, and that doesn't even cost £1 a year, because we have a series of yellow clothing banks that are all around Yorkshire, and you can go onto the website under Get Involved and then Recycling, put your postcode in, and then it will tell you where the nearest recycling bank is to your particular postcode. And you can put shoes, clothing and textiles into them, and we've had over £2 million from those clothing banks. It really, really does make a difference, and you can tell it's ours because they're bright yellow and they've got a helicopter on the front. So if you're having a clear out, have a look on the website and see if you can find out where the nearest one is to your home address and pop it in, because a lot of the charity shops are closed at the moment, but our clothing banks are still open. So we would appreciate any of your clothes or shoes, and those that are good quality are sold on. Those that aren't are still sold on, but sold on for being made into something else, rags, and other materials. So they all get used. So it doesn't matter what quality it is. It's a great support to us. And we have lots of people who volunteer, raising awareness, doing these sorts of talks, and in the when we can get out again, doing stalls and being at events and fetes and things across the summer. And sometimes the helicopters attend as well. So if they're not busy and they're not being used, they will come and land at a fete or in a field somewhere, and you can go and talk to the pilots, the paramedics, and have a nosy around the helicopters, which is quite interesting. So I'd like to just thank you very much from all of us for your interest in the air ambulance, and I hope that's given you some information that you perhaps didn't have about the service. And I'll stop sharing my screen, and then perhaps if you could unmute if you want to ask a question, I'm very happy to answer any that you might have.
Thank you, Helen. That was very interesting. Interesting insight into the service you provide, but also the issues around fundraising are quite interesting too, aren't they? And the ethics that you put into that's good stuff. Good stuff.
Thank you.
Anybody got a question they'd like to ask Helen? Joe?
Yeah, have you got a big fundraising team?
There are some staff, but a lot of the work is done by volunteers. We've got a much bigger group of volunteers. So the stalls and the things that are happening sort of week in, week out normally are usually staffed by volunteers. But what the staff do, I think there's about 3 covering West Yorkshire, a couple in South Yorkshire. So there are staff there who support us, so they will organise all of the activities, make sure the resources that are available that we might need, so we can go out and put a stall up, put a gazebo up, or they do the talk that I've just given. They make that and make sure that's up to date. So they do that sort of work, and then the donkey work is done by us volunteers.
Right.
You call it donkey work. What you do apart from coming to meetings like this?
Well, I've been doing talks mostly because until recently I was working, so I couldn't afford to spend a whole day on a stall to fete. A lot of volunteers do the fetes and stalls and things in shopping centres and so on. But for me personally, I choose to do the talks because I prefer to do those. And I get out and about to meet all sorts of nice groups and go to different parts of Yorkshire that I don't normally get to. So I enjoy it. I've been doing it for 7 years now, so I'm getting a bit long in the tooth.
Richard, would you like to unmute yourself, sir? Nearly.
Can you unmute people, John?
I don't think I can actually. Can I? Let me have a look.
No, I think they have to do it themselves.
Yeah, I think so. Oh, Richard, you've done it. Richard.
Can you now? Yeah. My question is, do you fly in all weather conditions, or are there some weather conditions where, unfortunately, you cannot fly?
Yes, I mean there are sometimes when the helicopter was based up at Yeadon at the airport, it was quite often grounded because of fog. And a few miles down the road, if you know where Yeadon is, it's up on the top of a hill. A few miles down the road, it was perfectly clear. So since we've moved it from there down to Wakefield, it's much less frequent where we're stopped by fog. But yes, there are. And we have a rapid response vehicle, so cars, those that you see dashing about before an ambulance gets there. And our crew use those when the helicopter's grounded, or if it's in being serviced, or if it's not possible to fly, they'll go in the rapid response vehicle instead.
Thank you.
Helen, one thing you mentioned about the night flying capabilities of the helicopters, but you stopped flying at midnight.
Yes.
Why is that?
Well, when they first got that possibility, they looked at the incidences of accidents and illness and so on, and decided that they would stop at midnight because most of them were pre-midnight.
Yeah.
Actually, it's tea time that's the busiest time. That's sort of 5, 6 o'clock, which in the winter it's dark. But in the summer, obviously it wouldn't be. But generally, they decided to stop. But that's always up for review. That's not fixed necessarily. But that was the first thing they decided on to see how it went then, because there are costs in keeping the crew and everything ready to go. Because once they dispatch within 2 minutes. So everything has to be ready. The crew has to be alert.
Yeah.
So they decided to go with midnight and see how that went. And it seems to be fine so far, but it can be reviewed.
So it's a decision really about the best use of resources.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Right. Tony Bethel.
Yes, in your talk you mentioned covering other areas where their local ambulance couldn't get. Do you come down into North Derbyshire where we are much?
Yes, we do. We often end up in the Peak District. What's that? Stanage Edge, is it called?
Yes.
Yeah. We're there. We seem to go there quite a lot. So yeah, we do, and we work with the air ambulances all around. So the Great North, further north, down into the ones that cover into East Anglia, and even in the Midlands, and as I say, occasionally we'll even go into Lancashire if we have to.
Oh, careful.
I know.
You need a passport for there.
You do. Yeah, no, we all work together. So if they need help, they will call on us. If there's a big incident and they need another one. And similarly, we'll call on them if we need help for anything. So yeah, we work very well together.
Thanks. Judith.
I watched the the British helicopter ER series on again, I can't remember which channel 4, channel 5.
Really?
Do you get any finance from? I mean, they cover different areas. It's not just the one particular area. They're in Oxford, they're in East Anglia, they're all over the place. But does that give you any funding to participate?
It does. I mean, there is a series on the Really channel called Helicopter ER that's exclusively the Yorkshire Air Ambulance. So yes, we work very closely with them, and we have a film crew person in the helicopter with us. So we have 2 seats and the stretcher space. So if we pick up a patient, and if it's a child, for instance, and we need to have a parent with us, and we need the 2 seats for the parent and the paramedic, we just chuck the film person out because that's part of the deal, that the priority is the patient. We do go back for them, but they are there filming and work with us, and they've actually been trained and now can actually assist in some of the tasks. So they'll help with carrying the stretcher, and they are very helpful. But yes, we definitely get some funding. We wouldn't be doing it without some getting some funding.
Jenny,
I must say, I find it very interesting.
It's very interesting because you get to really see what the crew do and how they help people. Yeah.
Thanks. Jenny.
Thank you. Whose decision is it to scramble the helicopters when a call perhaps comes in, presumably to 999 first?
Yes, they go into 999, and what we have at the Nostell base is an air desk. So that's staffed by our paramedics on a rota basis, and they monitor all those 999 calls that are coming into the Yorkshire base. I think it's Wakefield Way somewhere. And so they have a facility to listen in to the 999 calls. They can type through to the operator a question to help them to decide if it needs the helicopter or not. They can also access all the information about where the 999 calls come in, because it's usually not far from where the incident is. They've got weather maps, so they can see the weather. They know the geography of the county very well, so they can see if it's the geography that needs the helicopter rather than the injury. And they can also access the cameras on the motorway. So if it's an accident on a motorway, they can go in and have a look. So they use all of that information to help them to decide. And then it's the paramedic who's on the air desk who decides, and then scrambles the helicopter. And as I say, it's a 2-minute dispatch from that decision being taken. So if you go back to the circles on the map, 20 minutes, 2 minutes to get dispatched, 20 minutes to get to you. If you ever need us, within 25-30 minutes, there's a good chance we can get to you wherever you are in the county. So hang on to that if you ever need us. We're not that far away.
Excellent. Helen, can I ask you again about the fundraising bit? You're a charity. You're going to raise £12,000 a day.
Yeah.
Would you prefer to be funded by the government?
It's a question that we're asked often. And I think there are a lot of advantages to having the independence of a charity, because, I mean, there are lots and lots of rules that we have to abide by, flying rules, medical rules, but we have the independence to decide how we spend that money. So if we think we need a 3rd helicopter, we could fundraise and buy a 3rd helicopter. I have a nasty feeling if we were under the NHS, they'd be saying, do you need a 3rd? Do you really need 2? Could you just manage with 1 and making cuts? So there are advantages to being independent, but we do get a huge amount of support by the secondment of the medical staff. That makes a big difference. If we had to fundraise for that, well, it would be huge. We wouldn't be able to manage it. So although we get no direct funding, we do get the secondment of the staff, and that really is a great support to us. So we've got that bit of contact from NHS services.
Right, thank you. Thanks. Are there any other questions for Helen? Nobody's got their hand up. Judith.
Sorry, can I just start? Does the funding cover the paramedics as well as the doctors?
The funding is paramedics and the doctors from the ambulance service. Yes. So
and you finance the pilots?
The pilots, the helicopters, and all of the operational side of it. Yes, the bases and so on. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Judith. Any other comments, questions for Helen? Nobody hands up. Helen, thank you for that. That's been really interesting, telling us about the service, but also, as we've said, about the fundraising issues and what you have to do for that. We really enjoyed the talk. Thank you for joining us. Our next talk is on March the 17th, when we have Robert Mee talking about Bradshaw's and an early railway tour. So that's March the 17th at 7:30. But Helen, thank you. I feel I've got to go into some kind of editing mode now with the start that we made to that program. But it's all part of the learning curve.
Absolutely, and apologies for my film just conking out halfway through. I'm not sure what happened there.
Okay, right. Okay, thank you very much indeed, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night. Good night. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.